Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the first, and I hope of many, collaborative events between Women Who Code and the Society for Information Management St. Louis chapter. My name is Becky Arps, and I'm the incoming president of the SIM St. Louis chapter. SIM St. Louis is the premier community for technology leaders in the St. Louis region. You may know us best through our signature event, Gateway to Innovation. That is just one of the many opportunities throughout the year we offer to learn, grow, network, and give back to the community. This year alone, we've learned more about the considerations with big data from one of Bayer's data scientists, gained some insights on influence and how to change minds, learned how the CAS information system, CIO and CISO help their business by working together, and had a fantastic conversation with the lead at the NGA in St. Louis. This week is our National Give Back Week, wearing my National Give Back shirt. Across the country, events like this are being held by SIM chapters, along with a national silent auction, all with the intent to give back to nonprofits in our communities. If you'd like to learn more about SIM, please reach out to me. And now I will place you in the very capable hands of our moderator tonight, Kiana Reed.
Thank you so much, Becky. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there. And congratulations, Becky, on becoming, I believe, maybe the first woman president of the SIM St. Louis chapter.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Maybe, let's say maybe.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter, you are tonight.
Thank you.
That is an amazing accomplishment, and what you guys are doing with SIM is absolutely amazing as far as trying to bridge the inclusivity amongst women in technology. And with that being said, as Becky mentioned, my name is Kiana Reed. By day, I am the VP of Client Engagement for Object Computing. They're a technology consulting company in St. Louis. But as women, we wear multiple hats. So by night, I am one of the 3 directors of Women Who Code. And just a little bit about Women Who Code. Women Who Code is a global nonprofit organization that's focused on bridging the gender gap in technology careers by creating a community of support for women technologists and women in technology leadership. This community is committed to achieving this outcome by doing a few things, and this is the mission of Women Who Code: empowering women with skills needed for professional advancement and achievement, being able to educate companies better and evangelize our mission so that they can promote, retain, and hire talented women. Also enabling a community of mentoring, and networks all across the globe. So in the US, there's so many different networks, but we also go across the pond. And also being able to develop role models like Becky, for women in technology. It's so important to have representation because it absolutely truly matters when you see women CIOs and women VPs and women, VCs and co-founders in technology companies. It's inspirational, and it allows us to see ourselves also shattering those glass ceilings. With that being said, I'm so excited to moderate this panel of amazing and courageous women in technology leadership, with the goal of supporting other women in growing your career in tech. So before we begin, I also want to thank SIM and Women Who Code for this great collaboration, and this is definitely going to be one of many. Also, there are a few people behind the scenes that I wanted to thank for putting this on. Gans Roman from SIM, who had this amazing vision to bring these 2 organizations together and put this on for women. So thank you so much, Gans. Nikki Powers and Cheryl Collum from Women Who Code. Nikki also is a coworker with me at Object Computing, for working relentlessly and diligently to be able to pull this amazing group of panelists together and to program this thing to the T. So I only have a couple of minutes left in my intro, so well, not even a couple, maybe a couple of seconds. So thank you guys, the 3 of you guys, is greatly appreciated. So let's get this show on the road without further ado. So what we're going to do is kind of a round robin style intro. And what I'd like for the panelists to do is introduce themselves because I would not be able to do them any justice. And then as you're introducing yourself, let's kind of kick it off with a question. And a lot of people always ask, how did you break into the tech industry? So let's start with Jennifer, and please introduce yourself and tell everybody out there how you broke into tech.
Good evening, everyone. I am excited to participate in this panel. Normally, we would be in a room full of people and you could feel the energy and just take, your vibes from that. And since I can't feel you, I'm just going to have to create my own energy right here sitting in this room on this virtual session. As Kiana said, my name is Jennifer Walton, and I'm the Director of Technology Services with the St. Louis Zoo. I've been there for 19 years, 7 years in the role of director. I've worn many hats during my tenure there, and like to say that jack of all trade and trying to be a master of one, but that being said, we'll delve into your question. How did I get my break into tech? I've always been what you call a tinkerer. So as when I was in high school, I actually attended a technical high school where I took data processing, which is largely different than what it is now. And so when I was in the military, I used to work on the Wayne computers. But my big break was when I was working as a receptionist at an insurance company. At that time, we did not have an official IT department. And so I can remember they hired the first IT director, who happened to be a lady, and it was just her. She didn't have any positions. And it was time to get out our annual HMO directory. I know if you're familiar with open enrollment, if you're a little older, you remember they used to have the directories you would look through and try to figure out who your doctor was going to be and all of that wonderful stuff. So she asked if I would be willing to work part-time in the evenings on the HMO directory and help her out and, do my full-time job during the day. And so I said, sure, why not? So when she did officially when she officially got approval for offered me a position, and the rest is history. I was able to put in our first network at that insurance company, which was a token ring. And if you know anything about that, we crawled under desks and we connected cables together. And if you had one person that had problems or it wasn't working, then everyone down that chain was not able to get on the network. And so I got my start in networking infrastructure. I fell in love with hardware and kind of went from there.
Thank you for that. Sheila?
Well, I am not a cheerleader. I'm definitely a software engineer. So I will defer to Jennifer's budding energy to linger onto mine because I'm a much more chill type of person. But super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sheila Shapari. I am the founder, CTO of an agency called Parita Group. We're a digital consulting company. We focus in and around building software for enterprise customers predominantly, centered around customer and employee experience. That's kind of our tagline. We do a lot of different things, built mostly on Microsoft's Power Platform. So I'm a techie at heart. I first broke in, definitely was into computers, as they became a thing as I was a kid. I decided that meant that I was going to do a computer science major in college. I also double majored in music, but even in that, I remember reading the description of the computer science degree at the University of Illinois, and I stopped reading about midway through because I got bored. And that, made me wonder if that was something I really wanted to do. And I really didn't understand like what was the software part of this. I like to put computers together. I like to play around with them, but the whole kind of software engineering aspect was really abstract to me. And, you know, talking about algorithms and all the boring stuff that was on that degree description kind of put me off, but I decided to go ahead and try it out. And it really wouldn't have been for the first CS 101 teacher that I ended up having that was really good at explaining things. I remember the first assignment we had, it was like this tortoise and a hare console app where you had to like have a random number generator draw out a bunch of dots, and whatever one got to like this certain number of dots won the race. And it took me like way too long to do this, but I remember that feeling I got right when I finished it, and I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I get what this is all about, because it was like the coolest feeling in the world to actually be able to, you know, say I built that and that was mine, and kind of really changed my perception on, you know, what was initially kind of this boring, like I don't understand what is this whole thing about. There was all this kind of fogginess as to what it is, and then I just basically was able to take that learning and kind of work through my career, which has been, you know, code monkey turned architect turned worked in leadership for a number of years, and then decided to go out on my own. Really wanted to build a company that I always wanted to work for. So we've really worked hard on building a good culture of inclusivity and excitement, and a big family, love to solve really complex problems and meaningful work. Being able to do that through technology has been just so amazing. So I'm really happy to be where I am. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you for that, Sheila. Nikki?
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here as well. Again, not as big of a excited cheerleader as our friend Jennifer, but I can appreciate the excitement. So I started out in a tech school, tech high school, with the intent of working with animals and becoming a biologist, which was the path I headed on. During that, my high school career, it was talked about how computers were the new thing. And so I thought it would be wise for sure to take some computer classes, which I did. And so that became kind of a second passion for me, knowing that it was something that I would be heavily using once I got into my career. Once I was in my career after I graduated college, I started working with animals. I had an incident where I was attacked by an animal and decided I wanted to change career paths. And the only other thing I knew that I loved doing was computers. And so went back to school, fell into the position in IT while I was in college, and started on my path in security. So, which is where I am still today. I've had various security roles, but I'm still with the same company. I've been with Express Scripts since 2002 as a senior IT security analyst. I love my job. I've been able to learn all kinds of new and exciting roles in my company in the last 18 years that I've been there. So that's kind of where I ended up where I am today.
Hey, that's awesome.
That is, and I will tell you, being attacked by an animal will definitely prompt a career change. So that's super cool. Marcy, and then we'll end it with Erica on the intro.
Welcome, everyone. I'm extroverted as well, so we'll own that and bring some energy virtually. I, too, made a career pivot. I spent 12 years in nonprofit philanthropy work, primarily raising funds for the underserved. I have a funny story, or kind of an ironic story, with Sim and Gans Roman, who was mentioned, worked behind the scenes for this event. I was a charity rep with STEM event, the Gateway to Innovation Conference. And while there, I was just getting to know Gans because we had interfaced via email. And at that time, I had was in the process. I had adopted 2 children through foster care. and was noticing that my job schedule had a lot of evening and weekend demand, and I really didn't like putting my kids to bed over the phone on the way to a 7 p.m. meeting. So in the back of my mind, that was going on. I see Gons, I ask him about his career, and he tells me all about IT and things he's doing. And without thinking, I said, oh, I always love math and science. That sounds so cool that you do that. And he said, well, why aren't you? And just like you're feeling right now, I was like, I don't know how to respond to that. So fast forward, I found my replacement for my job, took time off to go back to school. I went through Launch Code and launched my career into tech. So I've been at Spectrum about 3 years now, and every day I'm bringing great soft skills and human-centered skills from the career that I had before.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That is so cool.
Go ahead, Erica. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Erica Wilson. I guess in line with what everyone else has said, I'm an introvert who works at being an extrovert. So welcome everyone, and thank you for having me. I am currently the Chief Information Security Officer at CAS Information Systems. You may have heard of CAS. We're a long-time standing company in the St. Louis area, started as a bank and still have the bank. But CAS Information Systems is a payment processing organization that works with big name companies to make payments, and we have data analytics. And we also support our bank as well. So several things that we're responsible for if you hadn't heard of us before. But my break in IT started long ago. I had always had a passion for math. Learning math, understanding math, wanting others to understand math, tutoring math growing up. And I had my very first coding class my senior year in high school. And I think we'll talk about some of this and how important it is for people to be exposed to certain career paths. Had I not had that programming class, I probably would have been a math teacher. Nothing wrong with being a math teacher, but I did not see that as a possibility until I had that course. And so I went on to Southeast Missouri State, studied computer science, loved it. I mean, loved every piece and part of programming and solving problems. And so I started my career in web development, did development for a few years, but made a shift into cybersecurity before it was actually called cybersecurity, probably back in 2000, 2001, right after Y2K. And I've pretty much done all areas of IT in some form or fashion, managed several different teams. I've worked in infrastructure, but security has always kind of been at the core. So at some point I've either been responsible for it or connected to from a regulatory or a compliance perspective. And with that, I will say that it is about solving problems. You hear about cybersecurity being an industry where we need help and there's a talent gap. And I've really enjoyed my journey thus far in cybersecurity, so much so that I've done some adjunct teaching here and there as well at some of the local universities. So I'm excited to be here today and hoping that I can help influence or shape someone's mindset around working in IT.
Thank you so much, ladies. Those intros were absolutely incredible. So I'm going to start asking you guys a few questions, and please feel free to jump in where you feel you can contribute. And then also for the audience, we will hold Q&A after we're going to ask a few questions, and we'll hold Q&A. So please pour your questions into our Q&A box and we'll get to you, time permitting. So for, I guess, the second question then, as leaders, we all know that it's a roller coaster, right? One moment you're up, one moment you're down, one moment you're screaming of joy, and the next moment you're vomiting, right?
Yes.
So if I can get, I'll start with you, Jennifer. What's the most difficult challenge you've encountered as a leader, and how were you able to overcome it?
So I'd like to share a little bit of a backstory with that. And it goes along the lines with Erica was saying when not being introduced to the different pathways or careers that are out there. As I stated, I started off in networking and hardware, and I really loved it. I loved working on my projects. I soon took on a little bit of website development and some programming. And when I initially started at the zoo, I started off as a split position between IT and marketing. So part of it was the website development, and the other part was getting the first electronic membership program up and running. And once I'd been there for a while, I transferred to, not transferred, but I became solely IT, 100% IT department, and took on roles in VoIP and just pretty much anything, you know, tech savvy they needed, I was willing to take on. But in taking on those roles, I always envisioned myself as the worker bee. I liked working on projects, and I never really thought of becoming a manager or even a director. I never had any direct reports. My projects were my direct reports. However, I did work with a lot of different departments and, you know, ended up collaborating a lot. And so the role of leadership, I was made interim director of IT in 2012. And it was something that came out of the blue. Our director at that time went into early retirement. And so when he went into early retirement, I was thrust into that role. And the challenge was, first, I never managed people, never even really had thought about that. And then I had this core group of people that I was peers with. And so I went from being a peer with them to actually, you know, being manager and director. And it was hard. As interim, I didn't have a replacement, so I continued to do my regular job and took on the role of director and trying to learn how to do those different things that I'd never been exposed to. And I didn't have the networking as far as people networking skills at that time. So I hadn't created a safety net. So I was struggling. It was really, really hard because I didn't know what to give up, what to stop doing, what to start doing. And I didn't feel like I had anyone that I trusted that I could talk to and just share that with them. I just expected or thought that I was supposed to know everything. And the biggest challenge also was just because you have the title of leader doesn't mean that you really are a leader. There are some things that you have to go through internally to make that shift. So that went on. I was interim for 6 months. They made it official, and I was still struggling. So finally, I, went to my boss and I was like, "Hey, I'm struggling and I need help." And he said, "I was wondering when you were going to ask for some help." And so that really opened up just a lot. It was a huge relief, and just opened up some avenues and a sounding board on what or how I should be doing things. I know I got involved in a lot of different programs. St. Louis is a huge tech community, and there are a lot of organizations and conferences and just people that are willing to help you, that want to help you, that want to talk to you if you're willing to ask those questions. And so I started reaching out and started asking and meeting people and just getting some direction. But the biggest challenge was making the mental shift from being the worker bee to being that director and that leader. And there were several things that needed to be done that I had to do internally in order to make that shift.
Jennifer, it's interesting you mentioned like the shift that happens. I came out of being a director in the nonprofit world all the way, and in the nonprofit world is such a different animal in the corporate world. So for me, my biggest challenge was I actually didn't have a positive interview experience. I had to drive the interview where I am now and say, hey, I brought this, I made this, I want to show this to you. And I didn't like what I felt. I came from Dress for Success. I learned, I taught people how to interact in interviews. That wasn't my experience. And so when Launch Code a few weeks later was like, hey, they really wanted you, they picked 2 people, can you reconsider? I had this mental shift where I realized that I wasn't saying yes to a technology job. I was saying yes to a technology job where I could influence the culture. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been trying, like I had a gentleman on my team who no one knew he was having a baby. And it was like, y'all, like we need to collect money and like surprise him. And so some close friends of his and said, what do we do? And they're like, he's going to be so embarrassed that he doesn't like this, the light shined on him. And so privately we collected funds and we found his registry online and just sent him stuff. And he and his wife were so elated that we got that sort of like coworker love, if you will. So for me, my biggest challenge that I'm still working on is just trying to shift the culture into a more human-centered approach.
Those are really, really good examples. And I love both stories. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit to talk about kind of something that's a little bit taboo, but I know that a lot of women, especially women, at some point in their career, and I know I faced it at one point, felt kind of the whole imposter syndrome piece, right? I get a lot of people to ask me about like, did you feel like you were supposed to be there? So I definitely, Marcy, I'd love to kind of hear a story if you've ever felt, you know, imposter syndrome, especially being in such a male-dominated industry, and what are some of the things that you've done or you had to do to deal with that and to be able to get over it?
Yeah, so I felt it. I would say I feel it daily. I'm the only female developer on my team. So I often feel alone and have to find my own support system. And really that's how I've solved it is internally, I've found colleagues, externally, I've found mentors. I have people that I can go to. Many of us maybe have heard a lot of the recent research that says like, you got to name what it is. So you just call it what it is. Like I'm struggling with imposter syndrome and it just kind of like, it doesn't solve the problem, but you're aware of what you're experiencing. Something else that really works for me is I took the time to write a power statement. So it's like a 4 or 5 paragraph statement that I read to myself in the morning. It's in my bathroom on the closet door. And it reminds me what my skills are, it reminds me what I'm doing. So I think defining my why has really helped, and having a support system has really helped me own that I struggle with imposter syndrome.
Great. Yeah, my end, I think it's been every big milestone that I've hit, there's always a bit of growing pains. So that first CS class, for example, I remember feeling like, oh, there's all these smart dudes. They're all dudes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
They're all way smarter than me at this stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I figure it out. It's like, okay, no, I got it. And that would, happen throughout the course of my career. And so I think the way that I usually approach these kind of insurmountable efforts as to how do I grow into this next level that I feel so out of place in, I always use a ski slope analogy. I am not a strong skier at all. I just moved back here from Colorado, but I got a little better at it. And anytime I'd be at the top of a mountain, I just might feel my stomach drop, like, oh my God, I got to get all the way down there. And there's only one way down. You ain't climbing back up. That's not going to be possible. So instead of focusing on this insurmountable hill that I got to go down, just carve one thing at a time, one step at a time, and just focus on what the next task at hand is. And I could handle that. And if I could just do one more, and then all of a sudden you're down the mountain and it's all good. I would say the biggest hurdles I've probably gone through were once I moved into the leadership roles. I was always okay as a developer being the only woman in the room because I could always reside on those, direct conversations. But once you had to become an element of authority, honestly, it was more moving into, executive leadership type of things versus the techie side of things that were harder for me, where I felt less welcome in that group than I would ever feel welcome in a group of developers, because can always get excited about writing code, but going in the male-dominated sales culture, and that's a different beast. So presenting to a Fortune 10 C level person and giving them a sales pitch and stuff, it would scare the living daylights out of me, and probably still does. And I will be honest, Zoom has kind of I feel like you get to see everybody in their houses, and there's just like a flattening of all of that hierarchy and all that intimidation, where I don't have to worry about presenting as formal and feeling like I'm in the same level as an executive type of person. It's like, no, I'm just gonna hang out in my room, and you're in your room, you're in your t-shirt, I'm in my t-shirt, like, who cares? And that's kind of how I've approached it. Not to say, there's always going to be things you get scared of, but it's, everybody's people is, yeah.
That's a really good, thing you picked up on, because it really has kind of broken down that fear and nervousness of like presenting and speaking. Everybody seems so human when we're all like struggling, and dogs are barking and kids are fighting in the background. Just takes away a lot of that stress. So I wanted to, a lot of the things that both of you guys touched on, I've read about some of these things in different books, and books are like my thing. I actually started the Women Who Code book club every third Friday. And it's helped me thrive so much personally and professionally. I'd like to know, and Marcy, I'm going to pick on you again, like, what are you reading today, or what book have you read in the past that you just feel like, I have to share this book with anybody I come across?
Okay, so literally this morning, I was reading my own book that I'm publishing. It's called The Forgotten Adoption Option. I just approved my ebook file. It's coming out this month.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
It's all about foster care adoption. November is National Adoption Month, so check that out. But on a professional level, I'm not reading a book, I'm listening to it, because drive time, I have to drop my kids off at school. So there's this like found time on the way when I have no kid in the car. I'm reading Change by Design by Tim Brown. And one thing that I've been really interested in my career is really understanding, and again, I came from nonprofit where you think about people all the time. You think about who you're helping all the time. And as a software developer, I work with a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time, and they think about, I got it done, it works. And I'm like, but what happens when you click this and this doesn't go this way? And I've been reaching out and learning that, I work with 100,000 people. So I've learned we have a lot of teams and a lot of incredible, talented people. So a team I've been working with is our design team. And they were like, this is how you can learn more about the psychology behind how we design software and how you yourself can become more informed. So that way, when I'm writing the code I'm writing and I'm testing my team's code and working on the designs, I'm more informed of how to think about humans, and that not just deliver what was asked, but actually deliver what is best for people to use. So Change by Design, Tim Brown, highly recommend it. Got a lot of good thought-provoking. I wouldn't say it's so technical. It's more like creative thinking.
Thank you. Erica?
You want me to talk about that one as well?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So for me, I do a lot of listening to books. Sometimes I have a couple going on at a time, but a couple of books that I think helped me when I was in transition, when you're at a point where you feel like you've plateaued, or you might be in search of trying to figure out what's the next move. I want to mention two books. So one is The 20-Minute Networking Meeting, and it's an executive's guide to networking. So we talk about networking a lot. You hear that term, but when you network, there really should be a strategy to it, and it should not be one-sided. And that's what really came out of the book. I read that probably maybe 2 years ago. And what I was really able to gather from it is that people really do enjoy connecting with other people. They want to extend and offer and assist in any way that they can. And the best way to do that is to find how you have commonalities. Do you have connections or similarities that make you connect on that level? But then also, even at the end of asking for it is what you're looking to do, whether it's advice or being connected to someone else, what can you offer? that is the really big part of networking that I think so many of us miss. Because most people think it's like, okay, what's in it for me? And I got to figure out who I need to get what I want. But I guarantee you, if you look at it from the other person's perspective in terms of what is something that you can offer, whether it's with your company or some connections or something else that you have, it will help the relationship be off to a good start, and you'll be able to maintain it. Another one that I want to mention, someone who's local here, her name's Keisha Mabry. She wrote a book called Hey Friend. I think it's called 100 Ways to Connect with 100 People in 100 Days. And it's a fun book, kind of lighthearted, gives you some simple ways to identify when you see people, how to really take time to connect with them and just get to know them. And you never know, at the time, I think she gave some examples around standing in line to buy donuts or coffee, speak to the person in front of you. Now we're, of course, socially distancing, and some of those things are not as common, but it's really being intentional about every opportunity you have to interact with someone, to utilize that as a way to meet someone new. And so, when you think about the word friend, it's like, oh, I've got my close connections, but you never know when you have the opportunity to meet someone that might end up being, a long time connection, or someone that you might be able to assist as well. So those are two books that I would recommend, the 20-minute networking meeting, and then Hey Friend, 100 Ways to Connect with 100 People in 100 Days.
Those
Both
are
really
some
good.
great selections, and I haven't read either, but I definitely want to read them both. Networking is such a pivotal part of being a leader, not just networking externally, but also networking internally to kind of, get you to the next level of where you're trying to grow. So Nikki, I want to bring you a little bit into the discussion. You talked about your journey into technology and at Express Scripts and how you've grown there. A question a lot of women want to know is, once you're actually in the profession, how do you develop and grow your career? And then once you have kind of carved out that career path, right? Like, how do you grow into leadership?
Yeah, so this is a good question. And Erica did touch on a lot of it. I mean, and it depends on your company that you're with as well. But networking is such a huge piece of this. And I think it wasn't until I figured out the networking piece that once I hit that and figured that out, I mean, it expanded my world, I mean, a million times over. It showed me opportunities that I didn't even know were a thing. I didn't know about conferences that are out there that are available until I, went to, it was a security conference, and I met, somebody, and they're like, oh, they have these, all these other conferences that go on throughout the year. And, this is early on in my career. So once I went to one, it was just opened up floodgates for me. You meet so many people in the industry. You realize really how everybody is connected, especially in St. Louis. It's such a tight community here, and I think we've all met somebody who has worked at the 6 major companies here in St. Louis. We all have worked together at some point. So that is definitely a big one. Hopefully you're working for a company that offers additional support and additional extra groups that you can go and be a part of. So for instance, we have a women's group at Express Scripts, a diversity group at Express Scripts, and you're able to interact then with your peers. And also that gives you visibility to maybe a vice president or senior director that maybe you wouldn't have had visibility to before. And that in turn can open up some doors for you. If they maybe didn't know who you were and what you did, you have those discussions during whatever it is that you are working towards in that group, and they say, hey, I remember I had a conversation with Nikki, and I know that she is familiar with this, and I'm going to hit her up. Maybe this role would work for her. And that's exactly how I have moved up in the company that I'm in. And it's a huge part of it.
I'd like to second what you said, Nikki and Erica. Networking is so just pivotal and important when you're talking about growing your career. And it's not all about what you think that you can get. It's actually building those relationships with different people. And also when you're looking at growing your career, when you help others grow their career, that helps you grow yours as well. So bringing other people along and introducing them to those different conferences and those opportunities, those are all key in as they grow, you grow, because I feel like it ends up being a win-win situation because I learn a lot from other people and they think they're learning from me and I'm learning just as much from them. There are so many conferences and they are typically free or very low cost that are in the St. Louis area. And just going there and talking to different individuals and learning that a lot of the conferences and when I'm talking to people, I learned that what I think is a unique challenge really isn't a unique challenge. We all are experiencing it or have experienced some type of issue in some form or fashion. LinkedIn has a lot of courses. They have a lot of just great articles and people are so willing to share information. That's the one thing that I'm just really have found that's very helpful. If you ask the question or you put it out there, the willingness that people have to share and to help you along your journey.
Thank you for that. That is a great tip. And then oftentimes too, your employer will cover conference charges too.
Exactly.
If it's related to professional development. So reach out to
Exactly.
your employers and see what they will provide and help you guys with as you're going through that. So Erica, you touched on a really good point because you started to discuss networking. And part of networking also, there's a mentorship part of it, right? And getting and finding a mentor. And I've had some amazing mentors. I still have amazing mentors in my career that's helped me get to the next level. I guess I have a couple of questions around finding a mentor. Can you give us some examples of some times you've been mentored and what did you learn and take away from that experience? And then I think one of the most important questions is, what do you look for in a good mentor? You know, as opposed to just getting a mentor, you know, there's chemistry and all kinds of things that happens with mentorship. So would you be able to kind of speak on that a little bit?
Sure. I had the privilege of sitting on both sides as being a mentee and a mentor. And what I can say is that it's definitely a necessary thing to consider when you're wanting to grow your career. And even if you are in a place where you're happy with where you are, I think having a mentor really gives you the opportunity to see a different perspective. And so I've had some amazing mentors as well. I think working in this industry, oftentimes I'm asked the question, well, you know, there's not many women, so how do I find a mentor? Well, guess what? Like, some men are great mentors and you can find that. Many of mine have been. And I think what you have to look for is someone who has a vested interest in seeing you grow. When you're looking for a mentor, it should be someone that you already somewhat have a relationship with, but someone that you also know that is a supporter for you and that will help you and speak on your behalf in terms of helping you to grow your career. For those who are being mentored from the mentee perspective, what I like to always offer to tell people is that there's a two-way relationship when you ask and you say that you want to be mentored. And so you have to put in the work, you have to follow up. You can't just mention like, hey, can you be my mentor, and leave it at that. You have to be very intentional about what it is that you want to gain from the relationship. And I think when you come with a plan, then you get more out of it. And so there's some expectations that are set early on. You know, I've mentored a few individuals, they had questions and then I never hear from them again, right? And it's so like, well, what happened there? You may follow up a couple of times, but you have to work on maintaining and sustaining relationships, and whatever that cadence may be. You know, there's some mentors where I've talked to on a regular basis. Some I can reach out to every 6 months or, you know, a year or so, and it's still like we've never disconnected. So finding the right place, definitely if you can find someone internal to your organization as well as external to the organization who can just give you a different perspective from a different industry perspective, and then also just from not being in the same group. So very important to have mentors. I think when they're successful, what you find is that you'll find yourself growing, and then the mentor actually also grows from and benefits from the relationship.
I'd like to echo what you just said, Erica, about being growing. I think when you are looking for a mentor or even being a mentee, you have to be in a growth mindset. And if you're not in that growth mindset, it's really hard to be able to benefit from that relationship. My first mentor, it kind of happened. I didn't even realize it was a mentoring relationship. It was someone I met at a conference, and we just kept in touch. And he would always ask me like really hard questions as far as where I was going and what I was doing, you know, within my career. So it's like he'd always check in and say, okay, now that you've tackled this, well, what do you think about that? Or what do you think about this? And I would be like, well, I hadn't really thought about it. And he's like, well, maybe you should start thinking about things that way. And like you said, it doesn't have to be someone that's in your industry. It's someone that really has a vested interest in seeing you just be better, a better person, regardless of, you know, what you're doing. One of the things, or a few of the qualities that I look for in mentoring, is just honesty, that they open feedback, being able to be real and just be candid, and you know, to not only tell you when you're doing good, but to call you out when, you know, you kind of BS your way through something. And so, and that's not always easy, but I appreciate that because it's all in the realm of the constructive criticism. And that's just like, even with the mentoring, it is a two-way relationship, because I learn just as much as they learn. And I think that's where the real benefit is that you both are growing and you're able to learn and take on different perspectives.
That's you hit it out. Both of you guys hit the ball off the park. It's very, very true. Okay, so I'm going to segue into another question. And we all work in technology, and we've all been in technology for a while, and we've had to grow through it. And you know, especially I started off as a software engineer, so I was in the room with all the guys. So I'd like to know, and of course, the question is, have you encountered gender bias in your career? And my assumption is that, yeah, right? But I guess the greater question is, how did you deal with it? Nikki, I'd love to hear kind of your feedback based off of your position in security, and there are very, very few women in that part of in that part of technology.
Yeah, so for any woman who is in IT, I'm not going to tell you anything you haven't already heard or been through. And I will say that it has gotten easier as time has gone on. I don't know if that's because people are becoming more aware, or if it's just that I've gotten older and I've learned how to deal with it a little bit better. So, you know, we've all been in a meeting room trying to have a conversation, trying to put our ideas out there, and they're completely dismissed. I've had to build my confidence up, because I think that's a lot of it, is making sure that you are confident enough to speak up and don't let somebody talk over you. And speaking of mentors, I had a mentor who really worked with me on that piece of it. And it was a male mentor, and he has guided me through lots of these things, and has helped me understand a different side than what I had originally thought. I will say, early in my career, I was a single mom. I got pregnant when I was in college, and I'm very determined. I was not going to let that stop me from finishing college and going in my career and becoming successful. I was going to be a single mom. I knew it, and I did it. But during that pregnancy, I was in my first year, still in college as well. And it was very grinding and hard, going to school full-time, working full-time, and being pregnant, and it was not an easy pregnancy. I had a manager at the time who I think was concerned about whether I was going to be able to do the job, and very much left me out of a lot of opportunity. And it wasn't until I graduated while pregnant, having my child, and letting him know, hey, I can handle this. I'm up for it. I can handle this because look at what I'm doing. I had to lay it out for him. And from then on out, he and I became good friends, and he never once questioned me again, and still keeps up with me to this day, wondering where I am. And I can't stress that enough. And I think a lot of people, when you encounter this, and again, this is many years of discussion and trying to understand, I think it's embedded in our culture that I don't think men always recognize that they are sounding discriminating, or that they're talking down to you or being condescending. And it's, call them on it. Call them on it. I guarantee you it will stop. And if it doesn't, you move up the ladder, which I actually had a situation a few years ago. And we had HR get involved. We had the discussion. I was flat out, let them know exactly what was going on. And we all got together as a team and discussed it, and worked itself out. And you know, you learn and you move on from that. And you can't hang on to those. You have to move forward, and you learn and you become a stronger person for it.
Man, I can't compete with that. My background was not, you know, we all have our adversity, but I definitely applaud you for what you have accomplished. That is miraculous. That's not the right word. Amazing, for lack of a better superlative. So yeah, it's an interesting one. You always get asked this question. I was just talking about this with a close friend of mine who kind of had to put me in my place a little bit, because I always have had this statement of, I really haven't felt any bias. I've, you know, been lucky with my positions and, you know, all of this. And she's like, you don't feel like you have to be the smartest person in the room always to be able to achieve just what normal, you know, entitled people are allowed to achieve? It's like, well, no, but I mean, that's just because, you know, I'm able to rest on my laurels of accomplishments and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a type A person and all this type of thing. And like, I guess I'm just unconsciously fighting and not even realizing that I'm doing it as I'm doing it, right? Because I've always been that kind of rebellious spirit ever since I was a little kid. I think that the one area that I've actively experienced it, though, that kind of bothers me, as much as I love these types of events, and I've shifted my mentality away from what I used to do, which was I don't want to bring attention to the fact that I'm a woman. I don't want to bring attention to that fact. I'm just doing what I do. I shifted that because I want to be able to empower other women to feel welcome, right? And it doesn't have to be a constant fight to get to that point of welcome. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to be able to do that. That being said, the alternative tokenism that comes as a result of that, which any of y'all are minorities, I have a very wide plethora of minority cards I can play. That part bothers me. So when I get asked to speak at an event as a keynote, because we need more women speakers at this event, or those types of things, like, how about my merits? How about we talk about those? How about we don't talk about the fact that you need a token female on your thing? That part is what I would say. And I don't know where you find the balance, right? Because you want the diversity, you need to check the box. But I don't know the right answer to that. I don't know. Maybe we can figure that out as a group somehow.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point, because being that token woman or token minority in a group, it really, I mean, it's disheartening, right? Because you're like, but I'm accomplished. I've done this, I've done that. And it's like, yeah. So that's a really, really, really good point, Sheila. And I think a lot of it is rooted in EQ, right? And emotional intelligence, and knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it in a way where, you are providing a level of empathy and less apathy towards people, because people are people and everyone's different. So Erica, I'd be interested in hearing kind of your feedback on this, but can you talk about the importance of having EQ, and what are some ways? I mean, we've all had to make adjustments, especially in leadership, into improving improving our emotional intelligence. What are some ways that we can all grow our EQ?
So, we could probably talk about EQ for hours, but what I can tell you is that I've been able to learn through the years by watching others, watching what works and what doesn't work. It really a lot has to do with managing not just your emotions, but even just having the ability to understand how you might impact or affect other people. And so when I talk about EQ, even with some of my team, a lot of it is just being aware. We talked about this whole thing of, now COVID has helped us realize that we're all human. We are all human, right? And everyone has a different perspective, their backgrounds, their influences, how they grew up. Even as you wake up every day, you might be dealing with something that is not normal for most individuals. And so I think empathy is really the word that I would mention with that, like leading with empathy, extending grace, extending trust until someone shows you something different. But I think either way, you have to start that way, and you're able to help build relationships a little bit better by focusing on that human factor. Women have been known to be a little bit more empathetic. And I think when you talk about having a diverse leadership team, or even looking at, you've seen a lot of companies now making an initiative to have a woman. And I will tell you that for a long time, being the only, whether it was a minority or a woman, it just became normal. So it really didn't bother me. What bothered me is that there weren't more of me, people like me that look like me. And so I have really spent a lot of time making it my business to try to influence, to get more women in technology, more young girls interested in STEM fields, because there's so many different opportunities. And the thing about EQ, like, it can be a turnoff when you feel like someone has misunderstood you, or something was taken the wrong way. But that's where the self-reflection comes in. When you take a step back before you're quick to react, you take a step back and you think about how the conversation went or how the meeting went, and then you follow through and you follow up to either close the gap on, hey, I think you misunderstood what I intended, versus just leaving it unsaid. And that's how people get better at it, is when you go back and you have the conversation, or you talk about, hey, remember the last time we met, let's revisit that. I think a lot of us oftentimes when it's, when you're dealing with something that's unpopular or that can be seen as negative, you just don't want to, like, you kind of just want to brush it to the side. But in order to make everyone better, you have to make time to follow through and be able to adapt in certain situations and circumstances based on what's going on in the world and with people.
Thank you so much, Erica. And this was such a great conversation. And I'm like, wow, it's 6:30 already. So our time is up. And I know, Sheila, you wanted to speak on it, but we are completely out of time. This is the first of many events that we'll do like this. I want to thank every single woman on this panel for, your commitment to this and being able to inspire the audience, and also being able to inspire me. I want to thank everyone who put this together, SIM, Women Who Code. Thank you guys so much. And audience, thank you guys for tuning in and hanging in there with us for an hour. Look forward to the next event. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.